In the recent months, a massive undertaking has occurred. Russell T Davies has collated the massive history of hit television series Doctor Who and its assorted spin-offs and put it all in one place for the world to see, or at least for the UK to see anyway, on BBC iPlayer. This is huge, as for the first time in ages, the classic era of Doctor Who is now as easily accessible as the more modern run. In fact, this seems to be the idea. Davies is insistent that while the show continued to move forward to new things, the history still be preserved for all to enjoy. In this massive initiative, the team behind this massive undertaking has announced something new, a feature film edit of the second serial of Doctor Who ever broadcast, The Daleks. This has announced to not only be colorized for modern audiences, but significantly edited down, from the nearly 3-hour runtime of the original 7-episode serial down to about 75 minutes. Personally, I think that's a little drastic, but who knows, it may work. However, this is not the first time that the serials of old have been edited in this way. In fact, there is a history of taking these multi-episode serials and reworking them into omnibus feature film edits, excising the cliffhangers and credits of episodes to create one unbroken experience. For a time, this was even standard operating procedure, and edits of favorite serials like this are all over the place. This is a quick guide to the history of this editing practice across the 60 years of Doctor Who. By the way, I didn't include Tales of the TARDIS in this video, because I was going back and forth as to whether that counts as just a straight omnibus edit or if it's something else entirely. And I didn't add it in this video because I couldn't work that out. Let's go back to the 1970s, before we had reliable home media. Back then, if you missed an episode of Doctor Who, that was tough luck. You would simply have to wait until the target novelization came out, ask a mate what happened last Saturday night, or hope for a repeat. Fortunately, as the 70s got into full swing, Doctor Who got a fair share of repeats. However, due to the serialized nature of the stories, scheduling 25-minute blocks every week for a repeat could prove difficult. Thus, a large number of repeats would be in edited format. The episodes would be compiled into one movie-like omnibus edit, which would air all at once, instead of airing an episode a day. However, it wouldn't usually be as simple as cutting out the cliffhangers and calling it a day. These serials had to be edited to fit within specific programming blocks, meaning that on top of removing cliffhangers and credits, some scenes would also be cut out at the director's discretion to fit these blocks. In general, 4-part serials, which unedited run around 90 to 100 minutes, would be assigned 60-minute repeat blocks, and 6-episode serials would be assigned 90-minute repeat blocks. This means that the repeats wouldn't be the full content of what aired originally, but an edit of what the director of the serial deemed the most important parts. The first serial to be edited in this way for a repeat was the Season 8 finale, The Demons. Originally 5 episodes long, this serial had about 20 minutes cut out of it to fit its assigned 90-minute block. This practice continued through the early to mid-70s. Cut-down omnibus edits of several serials went out in this manner, semi-regularly until 1976. These serials included The Sea Devils, Day of the Daleks, The Green Death, Planet of the Spiders, The Ark in Space, Genesis of the Daleks, The Sontaran Experiment, Pyramids of Mars, and The Brain of Morbius. The only one of these serials not to see significant cuts in content was The Sontaran Experiment. As it was only a 2-part serial, it happily fit within an hour-long programming block with time to spare. Most of these compilations haven't been seen again since they aired until fairly recently. In the comprehensive classic Doctor Who collection Blu-ray sets, several of these TV edits have been featured alongside their fully episodic parent episodes. As of the writing of this video, the repeat edits released in this manner include The Demons, The Sea Devils, The Day of the Daleks, The Green Death, The Ark in Space, and Genesis of the Daleks. In fact, to commemorate the release of the Season 12 Blu-ray box set, the 85-minute edit of Genesis of the Daleks was played in theaters, something I was privileged enough to see myself. My assumption for the Sontaran Experiments compilation edit not being included on its Blu-ray is that it's not different enough from its episodic counterpart to be considered notable. However, it is overall pretty exciting to see these slices of Doctor Who history being preserved, and I hope it continues with future Blu-ray releases. Incidentally, a repeat edit was planned for the Season 13 finale, The Seeds of Doom. Being a 6-part serial, it was planned to be edited for a 90-minute repeat block. This never seemed to go anywhere beyond the planning stage, but the notes that director Douglas Camfield wrote for the editing process are available on the DVD release of the full serial. I once found these notes and edited the 90-minute compilation according to Camfield's notes for fun. You know, because I have no social life whatsoever. Eventually, the advent of home media meant that Doctor Who could be finally brought home and enjoyed over and over again without the need to hope for a repeat or buying the novelisation. In 1983, the first home media release of Doctor Who was put out, a VHS edition of Revenge of the Cybermen. However, there was an interesting catch. For the first several VHS releases, the serials would be edited into Omnibus format. Why this was done doesn't seem to be readily available information, but I have a guess or two. My main theory is that the VHS is a format that doesn't have chapters. It's just a continuous spool of tape, and if you were looking for a particular episode, you'd have to fast forward through the tape to find what you were looking for. I believe the intention might have also been one of a consistent viewing experience, without being taken out of the story by the rinse and repeat cycle of cliffhanger, end credits, opening titles, reprise. In the end, however, in the UK at least, public opinion won out. VHS releases began to go out in episodic format as opposed to omnibus format, and most of those previously released in omnibus format would be re-released in episodic format. Unless you were in the US, which largely favoured the omnibus format until the age of DVD. All in all, 14 Doctor Who serials were released in omnibus format on VHS. The Seeds of Death, Spearhead from Space, Day of the Daleks, Death to the Daleks, The Time Warrior, The Ark in Space, Revenge of the Cybermen, Terror of the Zygons, Pyramids of Mars, The Brain of Morbius, The Deadly Assassin, The Robots of Death, and The Talons of Wang Chiang. Unlike the TV repeat omnibus edits, these were largely unabridged save for the removal of cliffhangers and reprises. However, there were a couple of sections. Pyramids of Mars had about 2 minutes cut from it, and The Brain of Morbius was edited all the way down to 60 minutes. As of now, none of these VHS omnibus edits have surfaced on disc release. I personally doubt they ever will, as they are just straight compilations of the serials minus the cliffhangers. Perhaps the Brain of Morbius edit might, given its more drastic edit. I guess we'll see. Finally, there are the special editions of certain serials. Doctor Who DVDs have often gone out as special editions, 2-disc releases with remastered video and a bundle of special features. However, on some occasions, these releases came with alternate, movie-length omnibus edits of the serials in question, offering an alternate viewing experience to the episodic serial viewing experience. All in all, 5 serials were released in this special edition format in 3 different ways. The first examples we'll look at are the serials Battlefield and The Curse of Fenric. The special editions of these serials weren't just omnibus edits of the original 4-part serial, but were in fact more drastic reworks of the original. The Curse of Fenric special edition adds 12 minutes of unbroadcast material and also reworks previously seen material to change the pacing. The result is a feature-length film with some new special effects and music thrown in for good measure. This same approach was taken to Battlefield, but curiously not to any other serials as of the posting of this video. I'm somewhat curious as to why these 2 serials were given these treatment, but these special edition movie edits seem to be pretty popular, so who am I to argue? Right down the other end of the spectrum, we have the special editions of Enlightenment and Planet of Fire. The alternate edits of these serials presented on these special editions are very different to those on Battlefield and The Curse of Fenric. While they too boast new special effects, they have actually been edited down to about an hour each. Now, instead of a 90-minute 4-part serial, you get one 60-minute episode. This is already a curious approach to these special editions, but it gets somewhat stranger. For some reason, these special edition edits are also presented in the 16:9 aspect ratio, as opposed to the 4:3 ratio they were originally shown in on television. This seems to have been a choice made by the director of these 2 serials, Fiona Cumming, but what exactly this was in aid of, I'm not sure. As a result of these drastic changes to the format of the serials, these special edition movie edits are not quite as popular as those for Battlefield and The Curse of Fenric, particularly that of Planet of Fire, which is somewhat derided for the new visual effects going a little too hard on the fire aspect. Finally, we have Shada, the unfinished and unbroadcast 6-part finale for season 17. In short, Shada had wrapped location shooting and gotten 1 block of studio shooting done, but then there was a strike and it didn't get finished in time for broadcast. Doctor Who fans being what we are, we clamoured for the story to be finished in some shape or form, and in 2017 it was, with new animation filling in the blanks where the studio shoots that never happened would have gone. On its initial Blu-ray release, it was released as one 2-hour movie as opposed to the 6-episode serial format it would have been broadcast in. Why? I'm not overly sure, to be honest, but it was neat nonetheless to see. Incidentally, the Season 17 Blu-ray release of Shada provides the story in its planned 6-episode format, as well as the movie Omnibus edit. So that's interesting. And that brings us to now, with the 75-minute colorized Omnibus edit of the Daleks. I dare say, with the success of this massive iPlayer rollout, that more of these Omnibus edits are on the horizon. Overall, I think they provide an interesting alternative viewing experience to the original broadcast versions. While the originals are of course vastly enjoyable and important, I find that sometimes if you want to watch a serial all in one go, it's fun to have a movie edit to watch, to imagine it as just one unit as opposed to several episodes. In fact, I myself have edited several of my favorite serials into such Omnibus edits myself in my spare time. You know, because I'm a loser. Now, I can't say I'm as much of a fan of the TV repeat edits that cut down the serials as well as compile them. I watched the 90-minute version of The Demons fairly recently, and it did feel like there were bits missing. But to each their own. Anyway, that's all for today. Hope you all enjoyed and or learned something, and as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell, and summon the Might of Sutak to support this channel. That's all for now. Have a good day. Time to question every decision I've made in my life. Do I keep that in the video?